Hey guys, we're going to be finishing up chapter 7 and then jumping into chapter 8. The story's getting a lot more exciting now if you haven't noticed. And before I continue reading, I just want to show you a picture on page 62 where we left off. Here's Mrs. Hammerbotham, Louis, Sam, and then the first grade students. He's being introduced to a first grade classroom because, of course, he's just now learning how to read and write. And Sam is actually in the 5th grade, so he won't be sticking around. He'll eventually leave, but here we go. Okay, Louis, let's see you write that. Louis picked up a fresh piece of chalk in his bill. He was scared. He took a good look at the word. A long word, he thought. It is really no harder than a short one. I'll just copy one letter at a time, and pretty soon it will be finished. Besides, my life is a catastrophe. It's a catastrophe to be without a voice. Then he began writing. C-A-T-A-S-T-R-O-P-H-E, he wrote, making each letter very neatly. When he got to the last letter, the pupils clapped and stamped their feet and banged on desks. And one boy quickly made a paper airplane and zoomed it into the air. Mrs. Hammerbotham rapped for order. Very good, Louis, she said. Sam, it's time you went to your own classroom. You shouldn't be in your room. You shouldn't be in my room. Go and join the 5th grade. I'll take care of your friend, the Swan. Back in his own room, Sam sat down at his desk, feeling very happy about the way things have turned out. The 5th graders were having a lesson in arithmetic, and their teacher, Miss Annie Snug, greeted Sam with a question. Miss Snug was young and pretty. Sam, if a man can walk 3 miles in 1 hour, how many miles can he walk in 4 hours? It would depend on how tired he got after the first hour, replied Sam. The other pupils roared. Miss Snug rapped for order. Sam is quite right, she said. I never looked at the problem that way. I always supposed that a man could walk 12 miles in 4 hours. But Sam might be right. That man may not feel so spunky after the first hour. He may drag his feet, he may slow up. Albert Bigelow raised his hand. My father knew a man who tried to walk 12 miles. He died of heart failure, said Albert. Goodness, said the teacher, I suppose that could happen too. Anything can happen in 4 hours, said Sam. A man might develop a blister on his heel, or he might find some berries growing along the road and stop and pick them. That would slow him up even if he wasn't tired or didn't have a blister. It would indeed, agreed the teacher. Well, children, I think we have all learned a great deal about arithmetic this morning, thanks to Sam Beaver. And now, here's a problem for one of the girls in the room. If you're feeding a baby from a bottle and you give the baby 8 ounces of milk in one feeding, how many ounces of milk would the baby drink in 2 feedings? Linda Staples raised her hand. About 15 ounces, she said. Why is that? Asked Miss Snug. Why wouldn't the baby drink 16 ounces? Because he spills a little each time, said Linda. It runs out of the corners of his mouth and it gets on his mother's apron. By this time, the class was howling so loudly the arithmetic lesson had to be abandoned, but everyone had learned how careful you have to be when dealing with figures. Okay, jumping into chapter 8. This chapter is called Love. And if you haven't noticed already, this book contains some humor. The Cobb is a funny character. He cares a lot about how he looks. He enjoys giving long speeches. So it's interesting to see how his wife and kids react to him. Just a fun thought that I wanted to share with you before reading further. When Louis's father and mother discovered that Louis was missing, they felt awful. No other young swan had disappeared from the lakes, only Louis. A question now arises, said the Cobb to his wife, whether or not I should go and look for our son. I am disinclined to leave these attractive lakes now in the fall of the year. With winter coming on, I have in fact been looking forward to this time of serenity and peace and the society of other waterfowl. I like the life here. There's another little matter to consider besides your personal comfort, said his wife. Has it occurred to you that we have no idea which direction Louis went when he left? You don't know where he went any more than I do. If you were to start looking for him, which way would you fly? Well, replied the Cobb, in the last analysis, I believe I would go south. What do you mean, in the last analysis, said the Swan impatiently. You haven't analyzed anything. Why do you say in the last analysis, and why do you pick south as a way to go to look for Louis? There are other directions. There's north and east and west. There's northeast, southeast, southwest, northwest. True, replied the cob, and there are all those in-between directions, north, northeast, east, southeast, west, southwest. There's north by east and east by north. There's southeast, there's south, southeast, a half east, and there's west by north, a half north. The directions a young swan could start off in are almost too numerous to think about. So it was decided that no search would be made. We'll just wait here and see what happens, said the cob. I'm sure Louis will return in the fullness of time. Months went by. Winter came to the Red Rock Lakes. The nights were long and dark and cold. The days were short and bright and cold. Sometimes the wind blew. But the swans and geese and ducks were safe and happy. The warm springs that fed the lakes kept the ice from covering them. There were always open places. There were plenty of food. Sometimes a man would arrive with a bag of grain and spread the grain where the birds could get it. Spring followed winter, summer followed spring. A year went by, and it was springtime again. Still no sign of Louis. Then one morning, when Louis's grown-up brothers were playing a game of water polo, one of them looked up and saw a swan approaching in the sky. "Coho!" cried the cygnet. He rushed to his mother and father. "Look, look, look!" All the waterfowl on the lake turned and gazed up at the approaching swan. The swan circled the sky. "It's Louis," said the cob. "But what is that peculiar little object hanging around his neck by a string? What is that?" "Wait and see," said the wife. "Maybe it's a gift." Louis looked down from the sky and spotted what looked like his family. When he was sure, he glided down and skidded to a stop. His mother rushed up and embraced him. His father arched his neck gracefully and raised his wings in greeting. Everyone shouted, "Coho!" and "Welcome back, Louis!" His family was overjoyed. They had been gone for a year and a half, almost 18 months. He looked older and handsomer. His feathers were pure white now instead of a dirty gray. Hanging by a cord around his neck was a small slate. Attached to the slate was a piece of string and a white chalk pencil. When the family greetings were over, Louis seized the chalk in his bill and wrote, "Hi there," on a slate. He held the slate out eagerly for all to see. The cob stared at it. The mother swan stared at it. The cygnet stared at it. They just stared and stared. Words on a slate meant nothing to them. They couldn't read. None of the members of his family had ever seen a slate before or a piece of chalk. Louis's attempt to greet his family was a failure. He felt as though he had wasted a year and a half by going to school and learning to write. He felt keenly disappointed, and, of course, he was unable to speak. The words on the slate were all he could offer by way of greeting. Finally, his father, the cob, spoke up. "Louis, my son," he began in his deep, resonant voice, "this is the day we have long awaited, the day of your return to our sanctuary in the Red Rock Lakes. No one can imagine the extent of our joy or the depth of our emotion to seeing you again. You who have been absent from our midst for so long in lands we know not of, in pursuits of we can only guess. How good it is to see your countenance again. We hope you have enjoyed good health during your long absence, in lands of we know not of, in pursuits we can only guess at." "You've said that already," said his wife. "You're repeating yourself. Louis must be tired after his trip, no matter where he's been or what he's been up to." "Very true," said the cob, "but I must prolong my welcoming remarks a bit longer, for my curiosity is aroused by that odd little object Louis is wearing around his neck, and by the strange symbols he has placed upon it by rubbing that white thing up and down and leaving those strange white tracings." "Well," said Louis's mother, "we're all interested in it naturally, but Louis can't explain it because he is defective and can't talk, so we'll just have to forget our curiosity for the moment and let Louis take a bath and have dinner." Everyone agreed this was a good idea. Louis swam to the shore, placed his slate and his chalk pencil under a bush, and took a bath. When he was through, he dipped the end of one wing in the water and sorrowfully rubbed out the words, "Hi there," "Hi there." Then he hung the slate around his neck again. It felt good to be home with his family, and his family had increased during the months he had spent and his family had increased during the months he had spent with Sam Beaver at school. There were now 6 new cygnets. Louie's father and mother had spent the summer on a trip to Canada, and while there, they had nested and hatched 6 little cygnets. And in the fall, they had all joined up again at the Red Rock Lakes in Montana. Okay, we're actually, I ended up not being able to finish chapter 8 for the sake of time, but I will still give you a question. Your question is, okay, so why did the cob not go search for Louie? And also, what did Louie realize when he met up with his family? So think of what happened. He came down, he had like this, almost like a mini chalkboard hanging around his neck. He wrote hi there, and tell me about that. How did that go down? How did he feel after that? Okay, have fun with it, guys.